A while ago, I released a video talking about a character in Frieren Beyond Journey's End that was only on screen for about 10 minutes, but left a real lasting impact on the story. Now, a year and a half later, with the release of Season 2, I find myself shocked to find that they've done it again, but this time in 7 minutes. In the second episode of Frieren's second season, a character is introduced that is not only incredibly likable, but also one that recontextualizes previous things that we understood about the story. To me, the fact that they keep getting away with these fantastic stories that are introduced and finished in such brief amounts of time is a testament to the writing capabilities of both the original manga and the team in charge of adapting it into anime. Which is funny because I don't think episode 2 of Frieren's second season is a favorite of mine, but I do find myself incredibly drawn to this character and his story, and what it implies about Frieren's larger plot and direction. Welcome to Season 2 of Exploring Frieren. My name is Pei, and today we're talking about when a show is able to get so much out of less than 10 minutes. You'd think, given how much time I've talked about Frieren surprising me, that eventually my expectations would adjust and it'd stop being so subversive. But now I'm starting to think it's a me problem because they essentially did the exact same thing they did a year and a half ago, and I found myself flabbergasted. The parallels are actually really interesting. In Season 1, we got Kraft the Monk, who was a historic hero, influenced Frieren's life, and has a pretty big impact on the direction of Frieren as a story. The same can be applied to the focus of today's video, the hero of the South. This character, by the way, was foreshadowed in the first season. It's one of the first things that crossed my mind when he was introduced. In a flashback during the 6th episode, Aizen brings him up as humanity's strongest warrior, someone who despite his strength still failed in the face of this overwhelming evil, fighting and dying against the 7 sages of destruction. But it turns out that there was a lot more to this story than Aizen let on or knew. And specifically how that was executed is the part I'm so attached to, especially given its short runtime. Last week I said if I had to simplify Frieren's story into a single sentence, it would be about her recontextualizing her old journey with a new one. Frieren does something that's very unique, having the first episode of the first season happen after the hero's journey. And as the story's gone on, slowly we've learned more about that past experience framed against the new one. Now, Season 1 of Frieren revolved around very low stakes by a classic shonen adventure standard. Frieren as an OP protagonist kind of undermines those risks, and the low stakes of the new adventure paralleled that of the previous hero's party. But as the story's gone on, we're slowly dipping into more serious topics, finding satisfying answers to questions I didn't initially think about. Which ties in beautifully to the topic of today's video, the hero of the South, someone regarded as humanity's strongest, a title Frieren thinks was incredibly deserved. Now, his initial introduction made me wary, because his immense strength came from an ability that's prone to creating plot holes in stories: foresight, the ability to see or predict the future. Slightly less complicated than something like time travel, this introduction is a tricky one. Are there limitations to that foresight, or what does it fully entail? These are questions we don't actually get an answer to, yet somehow I found myself incredibly satisfied by the end of the episode with the choice to introduce this character and this power. There were tons of other people discussing this episode who voiced very similar experiences of that initial reservation and then eventual satisfaction. While I'm sure not everyone had that experience, and some will definitely feel like it landed more on the side of confusing than necessary, it does lead to an interesting question from a writing standpoint. Why introduce something like that unless you're going to use it? And then, was it used effectively? And it all comes back to one of Frieren's foundational themes. What does it mean to be a hero? As I was sitting down and writing this video, I was considering potential titles, and my first instinct was to go with something like When Frieren Made Heroes Cool Again. Obviously, the hero archetype has been around forever and never really went away, but for a little while now there's been this major movement, especially in Western media, towards anti-heroes, villain protagonists, complex characters with gray morals that aren't just pure good. The most obvious example that comes to mind for me is the hyper-popularity of a show like Chainsaw Man. And I think a component of why we've seen this trend is because oversaturation can ruin anything. If every protagonist is pure and good, they end up looking a lot like one another and never really offer something new. Ultimately, there's this pendulum effect in media. As one thing becomes hyper popular and normalized, there's subversion as a response. But something a couple shows have done really well recently, like Skip and Loafer or Frieren especially, is taking archetypes or themes we're familiar with, accepting the premise, and then expanding in the underlying exploration. And heroism is a great example of this. Many different characters in the story are heroic in different ways, exploring things like how small moments are as important to heroism as big ones, or that being a symbol of hope can be fundamental for providing support to the people you're trying to help, as much as the actions you take and reinforcing that image. That latter one being a really cool exploration of a hero in the limelight, which we see focused on Himmel, a character built around a beautiful mix of kindness and vanity. The Hero of the South showcases another expression of heroism, one that hasn't necessarily been explored much in the story prior to this point: self-sacrifice. Which ties beautifully back into that question: does introducing foresight into the story add to it? Is it worth it? Yes, I think so, absolutely. But to understand that, we need to look at the Hero of the South's story, and how it ties into Himmel and Frieren's arcs. There's 7 minutes and 11 seconds from the point where we're introduced to the Hero of the South to when the episode then moves on to the next story it's telling. And there are 3 major scenes I want to focus on in that episode. The first is his introduction, a monologue from Frieren explaining who he is over a puppet show. I'm not a very big fan of obvious 3D animation in 2D projects. I do believe, though, choosing to introduce a character as a puppet show acts out his heroism is actually super cool, especially given the release of some behind-the-scenes info that showed us that they actually had these puppets be made and acted out as reference for the scene. I think that's not only really cool, but an expert way to introduce this character through a fascinating scene. And I think it sets up really well the next parts I want to talk about. Because this episode shows that before Himmel approached Frieren and convinced her to go on an adventure, the Hero of the South tried as well. During their conversation in the glade, there's a couple of really cool components. The first being that this hero chooses to reveal his secret to Frieren. When he's shocked that she doesn't care that he can see to some degree into the future, he asks if she doesn't believe him, to which she responds that she just doesn't care. I think it's a really clever use of Frieren's apathy that makes this entire situation feel significantly less like a plot hole. It's completely in line with the character we've been introduced to and experiencing the story alongside. From being taught by Flamma to later in her life avoiding bringing up the topic that she was part of the hero's party, Frieren's never been one to either scoff or pine over those in positions of power. Her actions do reinforce that character trait that she really doesn't care, which has also been her fatal flaw. The whole arc of her character is built around that premise. I think it's a great answer that makes the scene really fun. When the Hero of the South says that eventually another person, Himmel, will come along and convince her to go on an adventure, she just says that seems unlikely. Despite the foresight and information that she had going into this, she was still surprised by the fact that she actually did go on that adventure. This scene could have so easily poked holes in the story we've grown to love and all the decisions we thought that Frieren was making, but I thought it worked really well. So the final scene I want to talk about actually is mixed in between the conversation between Frieren and the Hero of the South in the glade. It revolves around this premise that during the Demon King's reign, the actual biggest threat to humankind was the 7 Sages of Destruction, which Frieren and the hero's party only defeated 2 of. There's major implications that the demon that Stark's family fought when he ran away is one of the sages. We've seen Qual and Aura. These are terrifyingly powerful demons. And then we find out that the Hero of the South knew he would inevitably be walking to his death, planning on facing all 7 sages, plus the right-hand man, Schlacht the Omniscient, in a brutal fight, leading back to one of the most noble forms of heroism, largely unrecognized self-sacrifice. Because it's implied that the Hero of the South had information that not only he would die in this battle, but that it would set up the future, trading his life for the death of 3 sages and Schlacht the Omniscient, someone who also had access to foresight, which is actually really interesting. It implies they both walked into this fight knowing they wouldn't walk away. I'm choosing to interpret the foresight for these characters to be more like potential realities than it is defined fate, that the Hero of the South could see the alternatives of what might happen if he chose not to go to this fight, to sacrifice himself, and he made the decision because of that. And we find out that he asked Frieren to pass a message on to Himmel. We even get to see his reaction before we find out what it was. And then in his own words, the Hero of the South says that he, humanity's strongest warrior, will clear a path for them, even if it means his achievements are lost in history. Then we cut to Stark playing with the local kids of this town that praise this hero. Then Frieren says, "Some future sight you had, the people here remember you." In 7 minutes and 11 seconds, they introduced a fantastic character that transformed a lot of our understanding of Frierin's plot, gave direction and stakes, but more than anything, told a beautiful, contained story. Thank you for watching. I'll see y'all next week.